Hello, my name is Isabella, and I'm 32. On the day I said goodbye to my husband, Gerald, I felt incredibly alone. I stood at his memorial service, surrounded only by unfamiliar faces with expressions of perfunctory sympathy. No one from my family felt the need to be there. Not my parents, not my brother Leo. Even Maya, whom I had known my entire life, didn't show up. They were all at Leo's engagement party, having decided that it was the more important event. At the most difficult moment of the ceremony, as everything was drawing to a close, my phone vibrated. A message from my mom: "We need to talk. It's urgent." And right after, a notification of 30 missed calls. Gerald and I met in a very modern way, a swipe on a dating app. His profile was funny and genuine, and after a few days of light-hearted texting, we agreed to meet for a coffee. I wasn't expecting anything special, but our meeting, which was meant to last an hour, stretched late into the evening. Coffee turned into dinner, which in turn became a long walk through the night city. That first meeting was the beginning of the 5 most incredible years of my life. Our story wasn't always easy, though. From the very beginning, my family disapproved of our relationship. Gerald came from a simple background. His father was a lifelong auto mechanic, and his mother was a nurse dedicated to helping people. They were incredibly decent and hard-working people who raised a wonderful son. But for my parents, who always placed great importance on social standing, Gerald wasn't good enough. "You deserve more, Isabella," my mom would say, softly but insistently, at every opportunity. "Think about your future. Can he provide you with the lifestyle you're used to?" My father was much less subtle in his statements. "This guy has no promising connections or a solid trust fund. All he has to his name are student loans." But their opinion meant nothing to me. Gerald had something that couldn't be measured by money or connections. He was incredibly smart. He graduated with honors from a very difficult engineering program while working part-time to be independent. He had a huge heart. Every weekend he volunteered at a no-kill animal shelter, helping those who couldn't care for themselves. But most importantly, he loved me for who I was. He believed in my dreams, sometimes even more than I did, and he never tried to change me. Our wedding was small and cozy. Gerald and I organized everything ourselves using our own savings, as we knew that any help from my parents would come at a price. My family attended, but their cold attitude was evident even without words, in their polite restraint and in how they barely interacted with Gerald's relatives. My brother Leo spent most of the evening glued to his phone, only occasionally looking up to make a short comment about the modest choice of food or music. Maya, my maid of honor and best friend, seemed uncomfortable. She had always been close to both me and Leo, but in recent years, I noticed how much she gravitated toward my brother. On that day, she spent far more time at their table than by my side. Still, I was glad she was there, as one of the few reminders of my past that I thought wasn't all lost yet. Our life together was exactly as I had imagined it would be. We bought a modest apartment in Chicago and were both fully dedicated to our careers. I found my calling in marketing, and Gerald, as a design engineer, was building his future at a green energy company. Whenever we had the chance, we would go on small trips, explore our city, and often spend our evenings talking about what lay ahead. Our plans were simple and clear: a cozy house with a small yard, 2 children, and maybe a playful dog. They were the most ordinary desires, but for us, they were particularly meaningful because we planned to make them a reality together. Over the years, the difference between the happiness in my marriage and the tension in my family became more and more obvious. Every meeting with my relatives turned into a test of my resilience. I had to listen to veiled remarks about our modest apartment in Chicago, about Gerald's career progress, and, of course, about why we weren't in a hurry to have children. At the same time, my brother Leo was an object of constant admiration. They praised his success at a well-known law firm, his circle of influential friends, and his successful and wealthy girlfriends. "Well, Isabella, when are you and Gerald going to bless us with grandchildren?" my mom might ask at dinner. A few minutes later, she would turn to Leo and say, "Don't rush, son. Build your career. There will be time for a family later." Such double standards were the norm, and over time, I simply learned to ignore them. In those moments, Gerald would just squeeze my hand under the table, and that silent support meant more to me than all the words of approval from my family that I had never heard. Maya saw all of this from the very beginning. She was there when any of my achievements as a child paled in comparison to Leo's. She was with me on the day my parents missed my high school graduation because it coincided with Leo's final game in the state football championship. She saw how on Christmas, I was waiting under the tree for useful but boring gifts, while Leo received the latest gadgets and designer clothes. "Yeah, your family is not easy," Maya once admitted after another awkward Thanksgiving dinner. "But I'm sure they love you, just in their own way." I just nodded silently then, not finding the strength to argue, but grateful for her attempt to support me. What I didn't realize then was that Maya herself had started to believe in my family's version of the truth. It seemed she adopted their point of view, as if I truly deserved less attention and warmth. Everything turned upside down 6 months ago. Gerald began to complain of severe fatigue and frequent migraines. We both thought it was just the result of work stress until one morning he collapsed during his run. The subsequent tests brought news that shattered our world. Doctors gave him a grim diagnosis, a very aggressive form of the disease. The prognosis was extremely cautious. We were told that in the best-case scenario with continuous therapy, we had 6 months to a year. Without it, significantly less. I immediately called my parents. Holding back my emotions, I told them everything. "Oh, what a nightmare," my mom replied in a tone as if she was talking about some minor household inconvenience. "Have you seen other specialists?" Sometimes doctors like to exaggerate. "Mom, we saw 5 of the best specialists in Chicago. And they all confirmed the diagnosis." Well, sometimes miracles happen. The main thing is to stay positive. By the way, I almost forgot, Leo just hinted that he's going to propose to his girlfriend soon. It looks like we have a wedding coming. In an instant, the conversation switched to Leo's engagement. The devastating news about my husband was immediately pushed to the background. I silently ended the call, feeling completely drained, but unfortunately, not surprised in the least. When I shared the news with Maya, her first reaction was exactly what I expected from a best friend. She was shocked, she cried, and she promised to help in any way she could. But as time went on, Gerald went through exhausting treatments, and Maya's visits became less and less frequent. She always had some urgent business, a pile of work, family problems, or a sudden illness. "I'll definitely come by on Saturday," she would promise in a message, but at the last minute, she would invariably cancel. All this time, Gerald fought his illness with astonishing dignity. The procedures were very tough. One course of treatment caused him constant nausea, and another drastically changed his appearance. He lost his hair and almost 25 pounds from his already athletic frame. I took an extended leave from work to be with him every minute, and our joint savings began to dwindle quickly. Over those months, I learned to give him the necessary injections, prepare a special menu for him on days when he had an appetite, and simply be by his side in moments when his body couldn't cope. My role changed. I became his representative in communicating with doctors. I sought information about new treatments. I was his personal nurse, but I tried my best to remain, first and foremost, his loving wife, and not just the person caring for him. Throughout this nightmare, my family kept their distance. I regularly sent them updates on Gerald's condition, but in return, I only received short messages confirming they had read them. Leo never once found the time to come. My parents, after much coaxing, dropped by once for half an hour. They sat awkwardly in our living room and seemed to leave with a great sense of relief. Maya was at the clinic twice. Both of her visits lasted less than an hour. It was obvious that the sight of medical equipment and how the illness was changing Gerald frightened her. People react differently in difficult situations, Gerald told me one night as I couldn't hold back tears by his clinic bed. Some just can't bear the sight of someone else's suffering, even if it's a person close to them. Even in his state, he tried to find an excuse for those who should have been our main support. At the same time, his friends visited constantly. His parents even temporarily moved to Chicago to help and give me a chance to rest. The contrast between his support circle and mine was simply striking. As Gerald's condition worsened day by day, news came from home. Leo officially got engaged to Victoria, a girl from a very wealthy family. My mom called me, her voice literally ringing with delight. We're organizing the most spectacular engagement party for them. The country club is already booked, and we've hired the best caterers in Chicago. Leo, of course, really wants you to be there to support him. When is the party? I asked, already guessing what the answer would be. In 3 weeks, on a Saturday. We decided not to delay while the weather is still good for outdoor photos. My heart sank. Mom, Gerald is very sick. Doctors believe he has only a few weeks left. I can't leave him alone. A heavy silence hung on the other end of the line. Isabella, my mom finally said, your brother is only getting married once. I'm sure Gerald would understand if you just took one evening to celebrate this with your family. Mom, his condition is critical. Every day counts. Well, that's a shame. We'll miss you. I'll pass on your best wishes to Leo. Leo's engagement was to be celebrated on the very weekend when doctors advised me to prepare for the worst. As if one could ever prepare for losing the person they love most at 32. Gerald's condition deteriorated rapidly. The last hope, an experimental therapy, didn't work and only led to serious complications, after which he was back in the clinic. His doctor, Dr. Evan, pulled me aside as soon as Gerald's condition was stabilized. I'm so sorry, Isabella, he said softly, but we have exhausted all treatment options. Now our main goal is to ensure his maximum comfort and peace. Dr. Evan's words, ensure comfort, were the ones I feared hearing the most. They meant the fight was over, and it was time to start saying goodbye. I spent that night in a chair by his bed, just watching his breathing. I held his hand, which had become so fragile, and tried to remember every detail of that peaceful moment. In his sleep, the tension left his face, and for a few moments, I saw the same Gerald from before, the strong and full of life man I loved so much. Our savings were gone. Medical bills piled up, and my caregiver leave was unpaid, so we were left with almost no money. Gerald's parents, being retired, helped with what they could, but their resources were limited. Swallowing my pride, I wrote to my father, directly asking if they could help us financially. His answer was short, right now, all the money is going into organizing Leo's engagement. Let's revisit this conversation next month. Next month. When for Gerald, it would likely never come. In those final weeks, sleep almost abandoned me. I dozed in short bursts, waking instantly at the slightest change in Gerald's breathing or the sound of the medical equipment. My diet consisted of hospital food, coffee, and whatever I could find in the vending machines in the hallway. I continued to send my family updates on his condition, still naively hoping that the reality of what was happening would finally get through to them. My texts became more direct. Gerald has been moved to palliative care. Doctors say it's a matter of days. Please, come. My mom's reply was short, we're praying for you. By the way, did you see the picture of Victoria's engagement ring I sent you? A whole 6 carats. Maya's response was in the same vein. I'm so sorry things are so tough for you. I'm helping Leo with the engagement prep. I'm completely swamped. No time at all. I'll try to break away in a few days. She never came. No one came. I just stayed by his side, watching as my Gerald, once so strong, faded away. Even then, he didn't lose his sense of humor, whispering for me to secretly bring him his favorite chocolate milkshake. He worried about me more than he worried about himself. Promise me you'll take care of yourself when it's all over, he said in one of his last moments of lucidity. Promise me you'll find joy in life again, Isabella. Don't let this destroy you. I promised, although at that moment, I couldn't even imagine how any joy could exist in a world without him. On the night before Leo's party, Gerald's breathing became sporadic and labored. The on-duty nurse gave him a painkiller, gently explaining that it was a sign the end was near. I called my parents. Mom, I think it's going to happen tonight or tomorrow morning. I really need you to be with me. Oh, Isabella. She sighed. We already have guests arriving for the celebration. Leo will be so upset if we don't greet his future in-laws. Mom, he's leaving. Right now. I yelled into the phone, startling the nurse. Lower your voice, my mother scolded me. You're overreacting. This is life, these things happen. Your brother's getting married only once. I hung up. My hands were shaking, either from anger or the realization of my complete solitude. Gerald left us at 4:47 a.m. His parents and I were by his side, holding his hands. His passing was peaceful. Thanks to the medication, he felt no pain, and his last words to me were, "Thank you for loving me." I stayed with him until dawn, unable to believe that the man who was everything to me had disappeared, leaving behind only a silent shell. His parents hugged me. Their grief was as deep as mine, but they were older and wiser. It was they who helped me make the call to the funeral home, which we had chosen with heavy hearts a few weeks earlier. They didn't leave me alone, not even when the staff came to take him away. They were my anchor when the ground was giving way beneath my feet. At dawn, I picked up my phone. Not a single message from my family. They must have been sleeping, getting their rest for Leo's big day. I sent one short message to the family chat. Gerald passed away a few hours ago. I'll let you know the details about the service later. My father was the first to reply, our condolences. We'll be thinking of you today. Not a word about coming. No question about helping. Just polite detachment. My mom's reply was the same, what sad news. Keep us in the loop about the ceremony. We have a lot to do today with the party preparations. Leo didn't reply at all. Maya messaged me privately, "Oh, Isabella, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over?" But before I could type a reply, a second message came. "Oh, I totally forgot. I promised Leo I'd help with the decorations today. Maybe I can stop by after the party?" I didn't reply to anyone else. I had nothing to say to them. The next 2 days passed in a haze as I organized the service. Luckily, Gerald and I had discussed his wishes a few weeks prior. He wanted everything to be simple, cremation and a small ceremony with his favorite songs instead of religious hymns. He also asked me to scatter some of his ashes over Lake Michigan, where we had celebrated our first anniversary. The funeral director was very tactful, but every question he asked, about the cremation container, the urn design, the obituary, felt like a new blow. Every decision felt monstrously final. Gerald's parents were by my side but gave me, as his wife, the right to make all the decisions. I chose a simple wooden casket for the service and a blue ceramic urn, the color of which reminded me of his eyes. I also wrote a short obituary, which felt like a pale shadow of his vibrant but all too short life. I scheduled the service for Tuesday, 3 days after his passing. I specifically chose that day so it wouldn't conflict with Leo's Saturday party. I was sure that now that their celebration was over, they would definitely find the time to come. To avoid any misunderstandings, I did everything I could to notify them. I created an online event, sent a group message, and even sent personal messages to my parents and Maya with the exact address and a map. The replies to my message started coming one after another. "Mom, we'll try to make it. Leo is very exhausted after the party, but we understand this is also an important event. Dad, I'll check my schedule and let you know later." Leo just sent a thumbs up emoji. Nothing more. Only Maya's message gave me a glimmer of hope. "I'll be there early to help with everything. Just tell me what you need. Love you." I wanted to scream. My world had fallen apart, and my brother was just tired after a party. My father had to consult his planner. And while Maya's words sounded encouraging, bitter experience had already taught me not to expect too much. On Monday, I prepared clothes for Gerald. I chose his blue wedding suit, which was now too big for him after his illness. I touched the fabric and was instantly transported back to that day, remembering how his eyes shone when he looked at me at the altar. In the evening, Maya called me. "Isabella, I'm so sorry for everything. The party was crazy, and I feel terrible that I wasn't there. But I swear, tomorrow I'll be with you from the morning. Should I come over now?" "No, thanks," I replied calmly. "I want to be alone tonight." "Of course, I understand. See you tomorrow then. At 8, right? I'll bring coffee." For the first time in a long while, I felt a slight sense of relief. It seemed that tomorrow at least one person from my past would be standing by my side. Tuesday morning greeted me with a gray, drizzling rain. The weather perfectly matched my state. I acted on autopilot. I put on a simple black dress I had ordered online and drove to the funeral home in Chicago. Gerald's parents were already there. His mom gave me a tight hug and whispered, "We're here, darling. Today and always." I looked at my watch, 8:15 a.m. Maya wasn't there. There wasn't a single message from my family either. I sent Maya a short question, "Are you on your way?" At 8:30, the funeral director approached me discreetly. "Mrs. Thorne, guests will begin to arrive soon. Perhaps you'd like a private moment to say your goodbyes to your husband?" I nodded silently and walked into the hall. Gerald was surrounded by flowers from his friends and colleagues. Next to him was a huge basket from his parents and my humble bouquet of white roses and his favorite forget-me-nots. There was nothing from my family. Not even a simple card. At 9 o'clock, the first guests began to arrive. Gerald's colleagues, an old college friend who had flown in from Seattle specifically for this, our neighbors. They all shared warm memories of him, and some of their stories even made me smile through my tears. Half an hour passed. There was still no sign of Maya or anyone from my family. My phone was silent. The ceremony began exactly at 10. I sat in the front row, next to Gerald's parents, and couldn't tear my eyes away from the empty chairs that were meant for my family. The officiant said very warm words about Gerald's life. His friends shared stories. His boss even spoke, saying that Gerald's green energy projects would serve people for many years to come. When it was my turn, I forced myself to stand. The absence of my relatives in a room full of his people felt almost physical. But I remembered my promise to be strong. I took out my notes and began to talk about the man who changed my world and taught me what true, unconditional love was. As soon as the ceremony ended, my phone came to life. It was a social media notification. Leo had posted a whole series of photos from his engagement celebration. I knew I shouldn't, but some unexplainable force made me open them. And there they all were, my parents, smiling happily next to Leo and Victoria. And Maya, raising a glass of sparkling wine in a celebratory toast. Everyone was dressed in their best clothes and looked as if nothing in the world existed except their party. It seemed that for them, that was the truth. I noticed the publication date. The photos were taken yesterday, not on Saturday. Their party had obviously lasted all weekend. It meant that while I was choosing an urn for my husband's ashes, they were enjoying brunch at a trendy restaurant. While I was trying to find the right words for his obituary, they were drinking champagne. After the ceremony, we headed to the cemetery. A small line of cars slowly drove through Chicago to the quiet place where Gerald was to find his final rest. When they began to lower him into the ground, I stood at the edge completely alone. Gerald's parents had stepped back a few feet, giving me a moment to say goodbye. The drizzling rain mixed with my tears. I whispered the same words I had told him every night for all those years. I love you more than yesterday, but less than tomorrow. And at that very moment, as the first handful of soil touched the lid of his final resting place, my phone lit up. It was a message from my mom. We need to talk urgently. I glanced at the screen. And below it, a notification of 30 missed calls. From my mom, Dad, Leo, and Maya. All within the last hour. I turned off my phone. And I continued to watch as the earth embraced my husband. Returning home, I felt that the emptiness had become even more deafening. I politely declined Gerald's parents' offer to stay with me. I needed to be alone. I wandered through our rooms, touching his things, trying to catch the remnants of his scent on the pillow. A few hours later, I finally turned on my phone. It immediately came to life, overflowing with notifications. I decided to read the messages from my parents. They were full of clumsy apologies. My mom wrote that Leo wasn't feeling well after the celebration. My father cited unforeseen circumstances, which in the next message turned out to be a Sunday brunch with Victoria's family, which they simply couldn't miss to avoid offending important people. I put the phone down. I just didn't have the strength to reply. No words could justify their 3-day celebration instead of saying goodbye to my husband. At that moment, a notification came through on my laptop. The email was from James, Gerald's colleague who had been at the ceremony today. The subject line was short, "You need to see this." Inside was a video file and a few lines of text. "Isabella, yesterday I happened to be having lunch at the Grand Hotel and saw your family there. They were celebrating your brother's engagement. I felt it was my duty to record this for you. I'm so sorry." My hands were shaking as I pressed play. The video showed a sun-drenched terrace of the Grand Hotel. My family and their guests sat at a table with glasses. After Victoria finished speaking, Leo took the floor. "I want to thank everyone for coming," he said, swaying slightly. "Especially my parents, who organized this party despite all the drama my sister always creates." A chuckle went around the table. "Seriously," Leo continued. "Isabella is always having some kind of crisis. First, she married that engineer of hers, ignoring all our advice, and now she's turned his illness into a whole performance right during our engagement." My mom patted his hand with a smile, my dad nodded in approval. "But the most important thing is that all of you know how to set your priorities straight." Leo raised his glass. "To the family that doesn't miss important events." The camera shifted, and I saw Maya. She was laughing and clinking glasses with Leo. "Isabella always loved to exaggerate everything," she added loudly. "Remember how she was so convinced she deserved to be at the top of her class? Or how she carried on about her university diploma as if it was a cosmic event?" More laughter. My mother leaned in toward Maya. "She called last night," my mom whispered conspiratorially, "said Gerald was about to pass and demanded we drop everything and come." Can you imagine, on the night before Leo's celebration? How tactless. Watching the video made me sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a coincidence. They had consciously made their choice, continuing the celebration and mocking my loss. I immediately remembered my recent conversation with Maya. I had told her that doctors had given Gerald very little time, maybe just a few days. And it was right after that when Leo announced the date of his party, which fell exactly within that tragic period. It couldn't have been a coincidence. He had deliberately chosen that time, and my parents and best friends supported him. I mentally went through the events of the past years and realized that this was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern. My feelings and achievements were always pushed aside for Leo's desires. Gerald had seen this from the beginning. They just don't treat you with respect, he had told me years ago. And back then, I argued with him, defending them and making excuses. Later that night, another message came from my mom. We need to discuss the family trust fund. We're making some amendments, and we need your signature. Can you stop by tomorrow? I decided to call Susan, my colleague who had been a great support during Gerald's illness and was at the ceremony today. Susan, do you know anything about family trusts? I asked as soon as she picked up. My husband, Richard, is a lawyer who specializes in those exact things. What happened? She replied. I quickly explained the situation. Susan's voice immediately became serious. Isabella, don't sign anything until you understand what it is. Especially now. Richard would be happy to look at the documents if you need him to. He always says that grief is a bad advisor in legal matters. Before I could finish, the doorbell rang. It was Maya, with flowers and wine. I hung up on Susan and opened the door, ready for the conversation. Maya's eyes were teary. Isabella, please, let me explain everything. Explain what? I asked coldly. That you laughed when Leo insulted my husband? Or that you chose a party over saying goodbye to him? She went pale. How do you know? I saw the video, Maya. I heard everything. I was just playing along. You know Leo, you can't contradict him, she tried to justify herself. I don't betray my friends to please someone else, I said curtly. Maya's face hardened. You've always been so righteous and eternally suffering. Leo's right, you make everything about yourself. My husband just passed away. I shouted. And none of you cared. We did care, we just. She stammered. You just had more important things to do, I finished for her. Isabella, please, we've been friends for 20 years. You threw away that friendship, not me. I suddenly felt a cold calm. Goodbye. Wait, she stopped me. Your parents are worried, they asked me to bring you to them. I'm already home. And they are no longer my family. Just like you. I closed the door in her face and slid down it to the floor. The last thread connecting me to my past had snapped. Now I was truly alone. In the morning, I got a message from my father. We'll be there at 11. We need to settle everything. I didn't reply. Shortly before they arrived, I called Richard, Susan's husband. He had reviewed the documents my parents had sent me during the night. Isabella, I'm glad you called, he said seriously. This document completely excludes you from the family trust, transferring your share to Leo. Your signature is needed for them to bypass the original terms of equal inheritance. Their cruelty stunned me. They were trying to disinherit me the day after my husband's funeral. Under no circumstances should you sign, Richard advised. And from now on, handle any financial matters with them only through your own lawyer. Exactly at 11, the doorbell rang. On the security camera, I saw my parents, Leo, and Maya. Sighing, I opened the door. Finally, my mom said, walking past me. It's only been 24 hours since the service, I corrected her softly. No need for drama, Leo rolled his eyes, settling on the couch. Everyone knew he was sick. You had time to prepare. My father was awkwardly silent. Maya wouldn't look me in the eye. Why are you here? I asked. We're worried, my mom replied. And we also need to take care of some family business. My father put a briefcase on the table. Just need to update some papers. The ones that disinherit me? I asked calmly. Their faces went blank with surprise. How do you know? My father stammered. Did you really think I would sign something without consulting a lawyer? You had no right to show our documents to outsiders, my mom snapped. And you had no right to miss my husband's funeral for a party, I replied. The silence was broken by Leo. Are you still on about that? It wasn't just a party, it was my engagement. That happens once in a lifetime. And saying goodbye to Gerald doesn't, my voice was icy. People pass away every day, he shrugged. I'm only getting married once. Statistically, with your character, probably not just once, I replied. Leo's face turned purple. I saw the video, I said, addressing everyone. From your brunch. I heard everything you said about me and about Gerald. My mom went pale. What video? I just played the recording on my phone. Their faces changed before my eyes as their own voices and laughter filled the room. When the video ended, my father was the first to find a response. That's all taken out of context. And what context, I asked, justifies mocking another person's pain? Isabella, we didn't mean to. Maya began. Yes, you did, I interrupted her. You all knew exactly what you were saying. Now I have finally seen who you really are. I walked to my laptop. Since Gerald got sick, I've thought a lot about our family. About how you've treated me and Leo all my life. And I started to write everything down. I turned the screen toward them. It's all here, birthdays when Leo got expensive gifts and I got something useful. School events you missed for me but not for him. My achievements you ignored, and his successes you celebrated. 28 years of the same thing. This is ridiculous, my mom scoffed. You're acting like a child. No. I'm acting like an adult who has finally seen the light. You never loved me the way you loved him. I was just an obligation for you. And now I realize you don't love me at all. Of course we love you, my father objected. We came here, didn't we? You came here with documents to disinherit me. The day after I buried my husband. And none of you were there. That's not love. Leo impatiently stood up. Can we just be done with this? Isabella, just sign the papers. I don't think you need this money anyway, considering your husband's insurance. That casual cruelty seemed to shock even my parents. Get out, I said quietly. All of you, out of my house. Isabella, be reasonable. My mom began. Get out. I screamed, and in that scream, all the years of repressed pain poured out. I've been reasonable my whole life. Enough. I flung the front door open. From this minute on, I no longer have a mother, a father, a brother, or a friend. You are strangers to me. You're not serious, my father mumbled. We're your family. Family acts differently, I replied. Family comes to help. Family supports you in your grief. Family loves, no matter what. You did none of those things. Maya stepped toward me, tears streaming down her face. Isabella, please. 20 years of friendship. Those 20 years meant nothing to you when you laughed at me and chose a party over saying goodbye to Gerald, I interrupted her. I'll fix it all, I promise, she pleaded. There's nothing left to fix. Leave, Maya. They walked out one by one. My parents, in shock, Leo, furious, Maya, completely broken. As she passed, my mom grabbed my arm. You'll regret this, she hissed. When the initial shock wears off, you'll realize you need us. I gently removed her hand. No. I won't. Goodbye, Caroline. Using her first name instead of a mom had an effect. Her face faltered for a moment but then hardened again. She turned and left without a word. Closing the door behind them, I didn't feel despair. On the contrary, I was filled with a strange but profound sense of calm. I had finally done what Gerald had always advised me to do. I truly stood up for myself. I knew he would be proud. That same evening, I took my first steps. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. I called Susan to thank her and Richard. And then I started looking for online support groups for young widows and for those who had gone through a break with a toxic family. My new life was beginning on the ruins of the old one, but this time, I was determined to build it around myself and my own interests. 3 weeks after the funeral, I forced myself to go to a support group meeting for widows. It was incredibly difficult to walk through that door. It was the final acknowledgement that Gerald was gone. There were a few women of different ages, but with the same pain and shared problems, from dealing with paperwork to tactless questions from acquaintances. There, I met Sarah. Her husband had passed away a year ago, and I immediately liked her practical approach to life. At first, I didn't get out of his robe for months, she shared with me over coffee. And then I realized he wouldn't have approved. I forced myself to do one adult thing a day, take a shower, cook a meal, go outside. That was the beginning. I took her advice. Sometimes that one thing was my only achievement for the day. But over time, I began to notice that I was able to do more and more. Gradually, I started to go back to work. My boss was very accommodating and allowed me to work part-time with a flexible schedule, for which I was very grateful. Gerald's parents were always in touch. His mom would send me care packages with homemade baked goods, and his dad helped me sort out the insurance and the small household chores that Gerald used to handle. You're like a daughter to us, Isabella, his mom told me during one of her visits. And Gerald's passing won't change that. Their warmth and care were a constant reminder of how different their attitude was from my own family's behavior. After our last meeting, my parents tried to call a few more times, leaving messages about needing to move on and healing the family. I didn't call them back. Leo sent one message, "You're being stupid. Call your parents and apologize." Maya was the most persistent. She wrote letters and messages, begging for a second chance. I read them all, but in the place of our friendship, I felt only emptiness. My therapist helped me work through these feelings. Setting boundaries doesn't mean holding a grudge, she reminded me. It means protecting yourself from those who have already betrayed your trust. For months after Gerald's passing, I decided to sell our apartment. Too many memories, both happy and painful, were tied to that place. I found a small apartment in a different part of Chicago. While packing things in our bedroom, I came across a sealed envelope in his nightstand. It was a letter from him, written in one of his last weeks when he still had the strength. "My dearest Isabella," it said. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer here. I am infinitely sorry that I had to leave you. Loving you was the greatest happiness of my life." For several pages, he reminisced about our life and urged me not to be afraid to be happy again. "You are much stronger than you think," he wrote. For years, I watched you not break under your family's indifference. Now I hope you will direct all that strength toward yourself. Not just to survive, but to truly live. To build a world where you are surrounded by people who can see your beautiful heart the way I saw it. I pressed the letter to myself. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they were not only tears of grief. In his words, I felt that he was still there, guiding me, loving me, believing in me. This letter became my main support. I carried it with me to my meetings with Dr. Evan, to the support group, and I simply reread it on the most difficult days. Gerald's belief in me became the foundation on which I, brick by brick, began to build my new life. 6 months after Gerald's passing, I started volunteering at the same clinic where he had been treated. I would just sit with patients during their procedures, talk to them, or just keep them company silently. At first, it was hard, but over time, I realized that by helping others, I was also helping myself. There, I met Catherine and Robert, a couple who had lost their son many years ago. They became a second family to me, often inviting me over for Sunday dinners. Grief is like a club no one wants to join, Catherine once told me. But sometimes in it, you find the most special people. Around the same time, I started a diary that gradually grew into an online blog. I wrote about my experience, and it turned out that my thoughts resonated with many people who had faced loss. A supportive community grew around my blog. On the first anniversary of Gerald's passing, his parents came to visit me in Chicago. We went to Lake Michigan together to scatter some of his ashes, just as he had asked. The day was clear, and the water was sparkling. "He would be so proud of you, Isabella," his mom said. I nodded silently. For the first time, I felt that grief wasn't consuming me but had simply become a part of my life. That evening, I received an email from Caroline with the subject line, "Family Emergency." Inside, it was brief: "Your father has heart problems. Leo's wedding is off. We need your help with the bills. Call." Before replying, I decided to search for information online. Local news confirmed that my father had indeed had a heart attack, but it wasn't as serious as my mom had implied. Another article shed light on the rest. It turned out that Leo's engagement had been called off due to a financial fraud scandal at his law firm. For a moment, I wondered if I should reply. But then I remembered everything: the video, their laughter, the empty chairs at the funeral, the attempt to disinherit me. Instead of calling, I found a few links to financial assistance programs, emailed them to my mom, and closed my laptop. Time went on, and I changed with it. The woman who stood alone at the grave was still a part of me, but she no longer defined my entire life. I had built a world that Gerald would have been proud of, surrounding myself with people who valued me for who I was. I still talk to him sometimes, especially in the evenings. I tell him about my day, about the small victories, about my new friends. And in those moments, I can almost hear his laughter and words of encouragement. "You were right," I once whispered, looking at his photo. I really was stronger than I thought. On the second anniversary of Gerald's passing, I took the day off. I went to the cemetery, placed fresh flowers on his simple but elegant headstone, and sat on a bench nearby. "It's been 2 years, my love," I said quietly. Sometimes it feels like an eternity has passed, and other times, it feels like it was just yesterday. In that time, my life had changed a lot. I had moved, gotten a promotion at work, and even started leading my own support group for those experiencing loss. I had true friends, those who understood that grief would always be a part of me but wasn't the sum of me. I had no contact with my parents and Leo. My mom still messaged me occasionally, usually when they needed something, but I no longer felt guilty about keeping my distance. The family that left me alone in my darkest hour had forfeited the right to be a part of my life. As I sat there, a familiar figure approached along the path. It was Maya, with a small bouquet. Seeing me, she froze. "I can come back later," she said. "It's okay," I replied, surprising myself with my own composure. "You can stay." She placed her flowers down and awkwardly confessed, "I come here every year. To pay my respects, and to never forget my worst mistake." For the first time in 2 years, I truly looked at her. She had changed, she seemed simpler, older. "How are you?" I asked. "Different. Leo and I had a huge falling out after everything. I just couldn't blindly support him anymore, and our friendship just fell apart. I heard his engagement didn't work out either." Maya nodded. "Yeah. After that financial scandal at his firm, Victoria called off the engagement. Turns out she was more interested in his prospects than in him. He was devastated." "And my parents?" I asked, not expecting to feel curious. "Your father recovered," Maya sighed. "But they had to sell the house to cover the medical bills. They barely talked to me either, after I distanced myself from Leo." We were silent for a moment. "I'm so sorry, Isabella," Maya finally said. "Not just for that day, but for all the years I was a bad friend. I let Leo influence me and forgot what real friendship was." In her eyes, I saw genuine remorse. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she added. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now." We talked for almost an hour. It turned out she was also seeing a therapist, trying to understand herself and her need to please others. "Gerald would be proud of the woman you've become," Maya said as we were getting ready to leave. "He always saw your inner strength." "Yeah," I agreed, running my hand over the cool stone of the headstone. "He showed me what real love is. And that love gave me the strength to demand more from everyone else." Before we parted ways, Maya and I exchanged numbers. Without any promises, but also without any of the old animosity. That same evening, I gathered the people closest to me at my home: Sarah with her new boyfriend, Catherine and Robert, Susan and Richard. My house filled with laughter, and in that warm atmosphere, I felt Gerald's presence more acutely than ever. Later, when everyone had left, I sat in my garden under the starry sky. I thought about the journey I had been on for these 2 years. I had lost my husband and the family I was born into. I had survived betrayal and pain that I thought was impossible to bear. But I was here. And I wasn't just surviving, I was building a new, genuine life, filled with meaning and love. The main lesson I learned was simple: family isn't those with whom you are bound by blood, but those who show up in your time of need. Those who respect your pain and genuinely celebrate your successes. I realized that setting boundaries is a necessity, and forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. But most importantly, I finally saw the strength in myself that Gerald had always seen. His love was not a burden of grief, but a guiding star that continues to lead me forward. Looking at the twinkling stars, I whispered into the night's silence, "Thank you for loving me, Gerald. Thank you for showing me my worth. I'm building a beautiful life. Exactly the one you would have wanted for me." A light breeze touched my face, and in that moment, I knew I would never be truly alone.